one of the most highly anticipated games that we had this week. Normally we start with Sunday Night Football, but there was a Super Bowl rematch that happened this week. The Philadelphia Eagles traveled to the Kansas City Chiefs to take on the Chiefs in a rematch of what we saw back in February. The Philadelphia Eagles come away victorious 20-17. Let's look at the top 5 graded players here for the Philadelphia Eagles, as we will do for every single team that wins. We'll do them first, and then we'll get to the other team afterwards. For Philly, their offensive tackle, Jordan Mailata, at the top of the list with an 86.5. Linebacker, Zach Bond, an 80.9. Edge rusher, Nolan Smith, a 75.2. Cornerback, Quinyon Mitchell, a 73.8. And then rookie Jahad Campbell, once again in the top 5 for them with a 71.4. Jalen Hurts, not his best game, but certainly not anything that really was catastrophic for them on the road. And sometimes it's really what you want from your quarterback. He had a 61.9 grade in this one. For Kansas City, their cornerback, Jalen Watson, was at the top of the list with an 84.7. Safety, Chamari Connor, with an 81.2. Fellow safety, Brian Cook, with a 79.5. Linebacker, Drew Tranquill, with a 70.6. And then offensive tackle, Josh Simmons, with a 69.3. Honestly, it could have been the tackle. Could have been the touchdown-saving tackle that ended up bumping up the grade for him to get in the top 5 there. Patrick Mahomes, a 70.1 was the grade that he was given once we did our final rechecks here for this one. Dalton, I'll start with you. Stat that told the story here before we get into most impressive and most disappointing.
So an extremely ugly defensive game, right? And actually the way that the Chiefs probably needed this to go if they were going to have a shot to win this game. And they did have a shot to win this game. But I think a big thing on the Eagles side of this is that they changed the program on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' entire offense, right? We know they barely blitzed the blitzed the Chiefs at all in the Super Bowl, and it just, they were sitting back in coverage. They were sending 4. They were doing just fine. In this game, run and pass plays put together, the Eagles blitzed the Chiefs 20 times, and the Chiefs only got 4.1 yards per play against those blitzes. Mahomes with a 61.7 passing grade. He was very pedestrian. Kansas City as a whole at a 57.3 team offense grade. I think when you look at the Chiefs right now, we already know they have a talent deficiency on offense. They don't have really any speed aside from Tyquan Thornton. Rashee Rice is out. Xavier Worthy was out for this game. Travis Kelce had a good game in this one, but he's slowing down, although the big drop was really the biggest play of the game that led to the interception. When you look at this team, now you're talking about making adjustments in week 2 and making adjustments against a team that you just played in the Super Bowl. Not only do you have a talent deficiency, but now you have to make adjustments to one of the best defensive coordinators really there's ever been in Vic Fangio. He changed the program on him just enough. The Eagles were the more physical team at the end of the day, as they usually are, and they came away with a win. The Chiefs, they missed some opportunities. They had a missed field goal early. The Kelce drop into the interception was big, and they just couldn't get off the field when they needed to late in the game on defense. So I think, look, it was ugly. The numbers say this game was just about, really even, and obviously only a 3-point game. I think the Chiefs, if it was going to be 20-17, they would prefer that over a high-scoring game right now. Yeah. But they just didn't get it done. And Vic Fangio, as always, did a really nice job, A, changing the game plan, and B, they just have so much talent on that defense, right? And the Chiefs are struggling to find those explosive plays, right? Yeah. They're just having a hard time making things happen because everything is so slow and plodding as it has been. And one other thing that needs to be said, the number we kept throwing out there last year, 12-0 in one-score games. This year, they're already 0-2. So if you're just looking at it on the surface level, this is the regression to the mean that you get, where sometimes one-score games even comes down to one play. You could argue the Kelce drop and then the Makuba interception. That's the difference in a one-score win and a one-score loss. So the Chiefs' defense looked a lot better in this game. I think that is a good sign for them, but they need Xavier Worthy back as soon as possible, and they just need to get enough wins until they can get their full complement of weapons.
Well, I thought the Chiefs' secondary looked better. I don't know how much I would say that their defense as a whole got better, because we're going to talk a lot about the offensive weapons for the Chiefs. Anytime we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, and we have since the Mahomes era, it always surrounds him and Andy Reid, who the running backs are, who he's got to throw the ball to. And for a long time, it was Tyreek Hill, it was Travis Kelce, and now, it was Rashee Rice a couple years ago, it was Xavier Worthy, and when he's been playing very well. And obviously with Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy not in the lineup, we talk a lot about the lack of explosives. What actually worries me the most about the Kansas City Chiefs is the trenches. You look at the offensive and defensive lines. The offensive line, when it comes to run blocking so far 2 weeks in, they're in the bottom half of the NFL. In fact, they're 22nd in total team run blocking grade. They're a little bit better in pass blocking, but we've seen Mahomes running for his life already through the first 2 games, and how much he has had to run and how much his legs have been a part of their offensive game plan. And I think that the pass blocking sort of goes into that. So I think he's sort of helping with how mobile he's been able to be to avoid that pressure and not record those pressures and maybe feel it before it even gets recorded. But the offensive line I'm worried about for the Kansas City Chiefs, and then specifically the defensive line. Again, 2 weeks into the season, it's a small sample size, I understand, but they are 30th in run defense grade just for their defensive line, and they are also 30th in pass rush grade. If you combine both of those things, they are dead last in the NFL in defensive line overall defensive grade. That's the issue here. And when you look at the stat that told the story, for me, it's the fact that the Eagles had 1.4 yards before contact. If you give that to Saquon Barkley, you don't have a chance of beating the Eagles. And I say that, and the Chiefs actually did have a chance. So it just goes to show you how talented they are and how good Patrick Mahomes is. But any team that has almost given up 1.5 yards to Philly before contact, I mean, you're just asking to get beat. You're asking for Philly to control the game too much, and I think that that's what ended up happening. There were too many times, especially in the second half, where I was watching that Eagles offensive line just get off the ball and get so much push, and Saquon's 2-3 yards down the field before he's even getting touched or has to make a decision of where he's going to cut and get around his blockers. It's just not going to work. 49 total yards before contact. That was 5th most in the NFL this past week, and so to me, that's the stat that told the story, because it not only tells the story of, hey, the Eagles are still good. Maybe they're not as dominant as they were last year with the roster that they had, but they are still very, very good. But on the other side of things, I know we'll talk about the lack of explosives. I know we'll talk about the playmaking for them in the passing game. I'm much more focused on what they have in the trenches, because specifically on the defensive line, it's just not good enough right now.
No, it's not good enough at all. And if you can't rush the passer, especially, their D-line only had 6 pressures and 1 sack throughout this entire game. And I know Jalen Hurts is hard to tackle, but they're not winning the battle up front. And you look at this team, you're going to have to play other good offensive lines throughout the season, right? Baltimore, Detroit, Washington's on their schedule, Buffalo, Denver twice, Indianapolis. I mean, you've got teams with good offensive lines. If you can't rush the passer in the NFL, we've said it with a lot of other teams, but if that's the case with the Chiefs now, then you start to talk about, okay, you have issues, because now your defense is not holding teams to 14 points and making things manageable. Now, in this game, they did. 20-17 is certainly a manageable score, but they have to find a way, like you mentioned, get better on both sides of the ball. The offensive line, we know, has been a work in progress since last year. Got some young kids up there, but if this defensive line starts to fall apart and then it starts to hinder their coverage unit like it did week 1 against the Chargers, you have a serious problem.
Most impressive and most disappointing from you in this game?
So, most impressive, just in general, the Eagles' run defense as well. Zach Bond, Jahad Campbell, everybody up front. It was just more of a good effort from their unit as opposed to any individual guy. A 78.4 run defense grade as a team. Only 1 designed run that went for 10 yards, and it went for 10 yards flat. They only missed 1 tackle on design carries. And you mentioned yards before contact, 0.4 yards before contact per attempt for the Chiefs. The Eagles were just a more physical team. And yes, the score was close, and it was really only closer because Mahomes hit the 1 bomb to Tyquan Thornton with the blown coverage late in the 4th quarter. But the Eagles were the more physical team, like you mentioned, on both sides of the ball. They were able to run it and stop the run. It was not flashy. Jalen Hurts didn't have to do much with his arm, but the Eagles are perfectly content to win this game because the best part of their team is still up front on both sides of the ball.
I thought Makuba was unbelievably impressive. He was fantastic. He had 1 interception in this game. He had a massive 3rd down stop on that mesh concept where, I mean, Kelsey got away with just straight up it being a pick play. Like, he wasn't even trying to really sell it that much. He goes straight to the middle of the field and just stops there. And it is such an obvious pick play, which really doesn't get called a lot. That's why mesh is a very popular concept, because you either get defenders who run into each other or you just create that natural pick play somehow with all the bodies in the middle. And when you have guys who, even cheat a little bit more towards it just being a pick play, it gets even more difficult to defend. Yet Andrew Makuba, his play speed is so fast. He was able to not only get around the chaos, but then still be able to close down on 3rd and 1 and get a major stop for the Philadelphia Eagles. He obviously had the interception that went off of Travis Kelce's hands as well. He had a sack on a 3rd down blitz. Makuba's play speed has just been so impressive to me. And it was so impressive with him when he was at Texas last year. Really the only question mark about Makuba was, is the lack of size for him going to be an issue when he jumped from college to the NFL? Because he is a little bit skinnier. He has a little bit less weight on him. And you kind of worry about, okay, is the durability going to be there for him? Is he going to be able to tackle the way he did in college against NFL players who are bigger, faster, stronger? So far, 2 weeks in, he's doing just fine. And that is good news for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's certainly good news for anybody who just likes to watch good football, because I think he's a damn good football player. But he was my most impressive. And then my most disappointing was Travis Kelce. Just 2 games in his last 22 where he had a receiving grade above 80. So, like, the Travis Kelce that was consistently having receiving grades above 75 and 80 and elite receiving grades, I mean, it's been a long time since he has been that consistent player. Last year, obviously, it was a down year for him. And this year, I believe his receiving grades it was like a 59.2 last week, and I think it was like a 60.1 this week. So it was right around that 60 mark. But obviously, the drop doesn't help him. He was a little bit more involved in the passing game. But still, it's disappointing because they need him. They have to have him with those 2 playmakers that are out. So that was my most impressive and disappointing.
Yeah, no, 2 drops for Kelce actually in this game. Look, he can still make plays after the catch and underneath, but he's not going to give you those big explosive plays anymore, and that's exactly what the Chiefs are missing right now. My most disappointing, going back to just the Chiefs' defensive line again, nobody graded above a 63 in this game on their defensive line. Chris Jones, I got to get him going. He's got 4 pressures through 2 games. It hasn't looked fantastic for him either, so Jones has to play like the superstar.
Yeah, somebody else got to get it going, right? Like Jones kind of is who he is, because we talked last year so much about Spags being able to move him all around. And the reason why you're able to move him all around isn't because he's supremely talented, which he is. It's because the rest of the defensive line you have to think about as well. It just doesn't feel like there's anybody on that Chiefs defensive line that you have to think about right now.
Normally, Karlaftis is that second guy, but when you look at the crew that they're running out there right now, I mean, they've been struggling to find guys, especially the inside. Omar Norman-Lott had a sack in this game, maybe
WWE style.
Maybe exactly.
That was a Dudley Boys off of the ladder. You know, where the belt's like hanging over the ring and somebody's going to reach for it, and then I should say one of the Hardy Boys, because that's probably more realistic, and then you're just spearing them off the top. That's how that felt with that sack for Omar Norman.
Right, but I mean, you're relying on, it's basically you've got Karlaftis and Jones, and then you've got a rookie in Norman Lott, you've got a rookie in Ashton Gelati playing 28 snaps in this game, and then you have the usual suspects like Derek Nottie and Mike Dana and Jerry Tillery, some veterans who have struggled throughout their career. They need to find somebody on this defensive line who can get it going, because Spagnuolo, he probably trusts the secondary enough to blitz at a high rate anyway, but one way or the other, if you have the lowest graded defensive line in the league, you're going to have a major problem.
Yes, 100%.